Hello and welcome to Cracking Cryptic. Today I'm going to look at my solve of Wednesday's Times Crossword, and I'll talk you through and pause the video playing the clues as we go. So this was me solving earlier, went very well right up until the end, then the last couple weren't so good. Now one across, very quick start. Bad cough interrupts routine filming stage. Well, what I'm looking at there is bad is a very likely anagram indicator. So if I can find any word that has the letters of cough in it in a different order, I've got a chance it's right. First thing I could think of, routine filming or filming stage, made me think of rough cut, and the routine is a rut. 2 down was another, let's just pop back there for a second. 2 down was an anagram, which is quite helpful. Physician taking top off toothpaste to spread. So if you take the top letter off toothpaste, which is a T, and spread the rest of the letters, i.e. make an anagram of them, you can get a sort of physician, which in this case is an osteopath, so I need an anagram. Now 3 down, this was annoying. Lady's fingers up to making footwear. Well, I mean, the clue surface, which reads as though it's about delicate cobbling, it can be ignored entirely. Lady's fingers, I'm aware, is a name for the plant or food okra. And although I kind of knew okra had some other name that I've come across before, I couldn't remember it for ages. I was wondering if it was Doge, but you'll see why I was thinking about that when we get there. A kind of dim, distant memory. Trousers and how to hold them up, a tuple definition. Cords, although you don't see many people holding their trousers up with cords these days. Minor physical problem, temperature very low. Well, minor problem with your body, and in this case it's a tick, so temperature 1 degree centigrade, TIC. Like a repaired bike, not to be junked, that's quite a nice pun. Junked is useful, and recyclable might describe your rubbish that isn't to be sent to landfill, or a bicycle that can be recycled. Letter is as translated, framed by punctuation. That looked like it was an anagram of as is in punctuation. I was thinking comma, maybe colon, but it needed 6 letters at least. I should probably have thought of commas and colons quickly. This is a nice clue, a bit of a classic in some ways. First of 2 encyclopedia volumes, perhaps, is a tiny thing. Well, if you can think of the defined answer, which in this case is an atom, why would that be the first of 2 encyclopedia volumes? Because it's A to M, the alphabet. It's a lovely idea, really. I have seen it used before, but it's a beautiful, beautiful word for using in that way. Had another look at the lady's fingers, still more convinced about gamboge, but no idea why, and didn't put it in. And it wasn't right. Couldn't see 14 down, although I was thinking that service might be mass, but I couldn't see the rest of that clue. So now I did chords at 4 down. 5 down, braves having to maintain graceful withdrawal. It reads as though it's Native Americans, but in fact, braves, rather oddly, often in a crossword clue, to brave is translatable as to face. So once you've thought of braves being faces, not so hard. Faces and aver, which is to maintain, making up face saver. I should have got 7 down. Trade is sort of light, but I didn't. 6 across. Understand fine party hasn't finished. Well, F is fine, so that's there. So probably understand is the definition. Now, if you can think of a 6-letter word meaning understand beginning with F, then this is manageable. Otherwise, you might have to think of an at home and take its end off. Still couldn't do 7 down, which is pathetic at this point. 8 down, camp belonging to prisoner of lag, or an off lag, German prisoner of war camp, I think. 12, delicacy of Japanese in not completing Bach piece. Well, I might not have remembered the Japanese, I think it's pufferfish delicacy, if it hadn't given me the clue about piece. But if you take the last letter off fugue, you get fugu. And now one picked on numbers of Romans around mouth of Tiber. Well, mouth of Tiber has to be the letter T. One picked on turns out to be very useful there. But first to go down, now I can see it's traffic is the sort of light and also means trade, and one picked on is victim. So what surrounds T is various Roman numerals, letters of Romans. Now, beetle and irritant in saucepan once. Not sure I've understood this one. Beetle and irritant provide the two definitions I worked of in saucepan once. Maybe someone can explain to me in the comments why that helps give chafer. I didn't get it, I have to admit. Right to stab second mate, so badly wounded. I didn't quite understand that at this point. But now we start to get a bit of, I suppose 2.5 minutes so far is not bad, but now it speeds up a bit. So now I'm thinking about the colons more specifically that I'd considered. Commas doesn't really work. I couldn't think of any word that would work. But the letter turns out to be a biblical letter, and if I'd written it in right, you would see that that was Colossians, which is an anagram of is as in those colons. And finally, I can now remember, even though it's Gamboge would still fit, I finally discarded that from my brain, and I can remember that okra is sometimes called gumbo. So when you add that to the TO, you get gumboot, which is a form of footwear. Don't know why, it's annoying for that to take so long. Now with my short service, mass, without its last letter, I can see the old beast can be a mastodon. To don is to put on. Extra name in article about garden feature. Well, a little bit of classical knowledge helps that an agnomen could be a name that a Roman would add on to his other two names. And that features the very useful garden feature, a nome, an, which is an article. That's not easy for most people, but I happen to know that. College town. Having taken up jazz, tricky to hum. But again, tricky is a very clear anagram indicator. To hum surely only has one anagram, which is mouth. And then you need a little bit of either general knowledge, or you could reverse a four-letter word for a type of jazz. And that gives you trad backwards to make Dartmouth, which is a naval college. 17 down, with misgivings. Well, the enumeration here is the best part. 3, 2, 4. I seal newly. Well, that's got to be the letters of I seal in a new way. And dead within, the dead is late. And if you put that into an anagram of I seal, you get illities, which means with giving. Now, this was quite interesting. Forced liquid into female put on stretcher. We've got the female, that's letter F. I didn't know the answer, but that was because I didn't have the general knowledge to know that this word means forced liquid into. Think about that if you want to. I'm not sure if I come up with this straight away. I think I move on first. This right to stab second mate, so badly wounded. The second, right is letter R. To stab means to go into or penetrate the other bits of the clue. And the other bits of the clue are second, which translates here as mo, from moment, as in hang on a mo. And then mate is in fact tally, as in to kind of equal something or to agree with something, which is quite a stretch as a definition, but that gives you mortally, so badly wounded if you're stabbed. 22 across, my general knowledge got in the way a bit here. Jacob's wife spends hour going after fine jumper. Well, I do remember that Jacob married Leah in the Bible, I think after some sort of wedding problem where there was a wife substitution, maybe for Esau to marry Leah. So I wrote in Leah, But then I had to think about that for a second or two and realised that she spends or wastes her hour, which is the letter H, and going after fine, just as we had in Fathom. Fine means F. So take off the H, put an F on the front, you get flee, which is a jumper. 24. Exploit chap I turned out of bed past time. Well, this is made up of lots of bits of wordplay. The definition is exploit, and frankly I used that given these letters. I was thinking maneuver, but this is a slightly better synonym. Chap is man, I is I. Turned out of bed is a two-letter word for out of bed reversed, and then past time is late, funnily enough crossing the late in ill at ease. That all gives you manipulate, out of bed, being up. Now, 26 across, out in old magazine. Out is this kind of Yorkshire word for anything, but that's not the important thing here. If you can think of a definition of an old magazine, and I mean that is a magazine issue that is from the past, that's called a back number. Why would out be a back number? Because it's 2 reversed, which is quite neat. Kind of the wordplay is within the clue already. In that case, some people refer to that as a kind of backwards clue. So that's back number. Now we're 4 minutes in here, looking like a very fast time, only the bottom of the grid to do. Lifesaver, talking of one with knowledge. Well, that's a homophone, but it's only a homophone in RP or Southern English accents, which I always think is not all that fair. Then I had a look, I think. Back to 19 down. Now, with this F, A and K in place, finally I was forced to accept that female put on stretcher must be F, racked, which gives us fracked. And obviously I've heard of fracking as a commercial energy search. I didn't realise that it was done by forcing liquid into the seams under the earth, which is what it must be. So you learn every day is a school day with the Times Crossword. 21 down, strong man almost. Well, that's got to be Atlas without its last S, given the beginning of this entry. Crushes worker. A worker is often an ant or a bee. You put an ant into Atlas without its last letter, you get Atlanta, an Olympic venue. Personal life somewhat on the up. It's plain. Well, this plain is a classic crossword entry, but this is a rather well hidden, a hidden clue in fact. The letters of the answer are hidden in personal life, so they're personal life to some extent or somewhat, written upwards. So if you start from the L of life, 5 letters going backwards form Flano, and Argentinian plain, I don't know how to pronounce it. Lano maybe is just straightforward. 25 down, contract for sporting prize. It's not contract, it's contract. If you purse your lips or contract them, that's a sporting prize is like a purse in a boxing match. Now, this is where it got hard for me. 27 down, sizable British force on the ground. Well, that looks like big from 3 letters beginning with B for sizable. British could be B, but I don't know what force on the ground is, so I wasn't confident enough to write it in yet. Then we have a look at the crosses again. I mean, I'll just run it on from here now. 29 across, make fuss about hotel, whatever it is. Well, the only word I can think of that fits that is howdah, which is the platform for riding an elephant. That doesn't seem very relevant to this clue. Try 30 across, unclear boundaries in this old people's home. Well, that's a sort of pun, possibly not entirely politically correct. An unclear boundaries mark a grey area. And that's an old people's home because I guess their hair or their attitudes are grey. The lifesaver, talking of one with knowledge, is Noah, which Someone who knows something might be called a knower, and in my accent at least, that sounds like the ark-building patriarch who saved all the lives, so that's knower. 27 down, I've gone for big. I'd love somebody to explain why BIG is British Force on the Ground. It might be something like the BEF, the British Expeditionary Force, that I don't know, but I honestly don't know why big is Force on the Ground. And then finally, I spent a good minute or two studying Make Fuss About Hotel, whatever it is. Because I could only think of how, and that didn't fit the answer, I started checking the downs to make sure that I'd got the right answers written in, no misprints and no errors in solving there. Started to think, could it possibly end in TH? Goodliffe? No. But what word is this? And whatever it is did suggest it might be a slang, more modern word than howdah, but I just couldn't think of it for some reason. And eventually I forced myself to realise that fuss about is likely to be ado written backwards. Hotel could well be H from the phonetic alphabet. And the bit I was not seeing is make is do, and that gives us doodah, which is a kind of a catch-all term for something you can't think of the name of, like a thingamy or a what's it is a doodah. And I do know that, and I don't know why it took me so long to think of it. So a kind of average finishing time for me in the end, 6:41. It looked like it was going to be a lot quicker. I was certainly hoping for a time ending in 4 at one point, but that fell apart. As I say, I'd love somebody to explain both why BIG is British Force on the Ground and why a chafer might have been in a saucepan. It's just not something I know in either case, but the great thing about cryptic clues is they give you enough that you can put in the answer without fully understanding it, because there's at least 2 parts to the clue. And that's Wednesday's Times Crossword. I hope that's helpful for you in your solving. Certainly, quite instructive for me, as I say. I know more about fracking than I did, and I'll probably find out about the BIG in due course. But thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you again on Cracking the Cryptic. Do subscribe, I'd love that, and hope to see you again for more videos about crosswords and Sudoku. Bye now.